Hello guys, Shane here with another video of brief history of video games. In previous episodes I covered the beginning of industry, creation of video game arcades and consoles, and talked about the first steps of video game industry. If you missed anything or want to revisit the evolution, I made few videos about each respective topic. This episode will be a bit shorter but necessary to close all in this period before we move into more exciting next time. While first video game arcades and consoles gave better insight and build-up for video game industry, pure computer side, or I should say mainframe computer video games in this period has been a bit put behind. Computer games in majority of 1970s were in some ways still experimental, simply due limitations in visualization and price of computers, hardware and tools. Many games has been literally modifications or updates of existing games. Al-Qaeda Best Games has been put into the book named 101 Basic Computer Games created by David H. Al. He took the original source codes and submissions of games, modified them and gave people an option how to make them in basic programming language. While today we can just simply put download games, back then that was a first bigger pioneering movement in spreading new games. First release of 101 Basic in 1973 sold around 10,000 copies. After leaving DAC in 1974, Al started the Creative Computing magazine and continued in informing and spreading the new informations about computing hardware and software. He also reacquired the rights of his book and made a new release in 1978, which over years became a first computing-oriented book which sold over a million copies and became the most impactful book for basic language. Speaking of games, as we knew, firstly are converted to games. Hammurabi and Lunar Lander from focal language to basic in 1971. I made a segment about them in first episode, so if you are interested, you can check it out. Another game from the book is the Civil War, the text-based computer game that puts the player against the computer in a simulation of American Civil War. It was created in BASIC in 1968 by Larry Cram, Luther Gotti and Doug Hibbard. Al further credited Paul and Haas of TIS in South Pole, Minnesota for converting into a two-player game. The game simulates 14 major battles of the conflict with human players as the South and the computer as or opponent as the North. Possibly the most popular of the mainframe games that appeared in the Al's book was Star Trek. The game was a text-based computer game that puts player in the command of Starship Enterprise on a mission to hunt and destroy an invading fleet of Klingon warships. Unlike the other text-based games, however, it did not use written responses to player input, but instead had a character-based graphics with different characters using graphical symbols to represent objects. It was initially developed by Mike Mayfield in 1971 on an SDS Sigma 7 mainframe. While 1970s mainframe were more powerful than arcade and console hardware of the period, they need to parcel out computing resources to dozens of simultaneous users, while time sharing significantly hampered their abilities. Thus, programmers on mainframe games focused on strategy and puzzle-solving mechanics over pure action. Most noticeably, the games of this period include the tactical combat game Star Trek, as I mentioned earlier by Mike Mayfield, and the hide-and-seek game Hunt the Wampus from 1972 by Gregory Yop, and the strategic war game Empire from 1977 by Walter Bright. Perhaps the most significant game of the period was Colossal Cave Adventure, or simply Adventure, created in 1976 by Will Crafter by combining his passion for caving with concepts of the newly released tabletop role-playing game RPG Dungeons & Dragons. Expanded by Don Woods in 1977 with the emphasis of the high fantasy, for example from J.R.R. Tolkien, Adventure established a new genre based around the exploration, inventory-based puzzle solving, and which that made the transition to personal computers in the late of 1970s. While most games were created on hardware of limited graphic ability, one computer able to host more impressive games was the Plateau system, developed at the University of Illinois. Intended as an educational computer, the system connected hundreds of users of all over the United States via remote terminals that features high-quality plasma displays and allow users to interact with each other in real time. This allowed the system to host an impressive array of graphic and or multiplayer games, including some of the earliest known computer RPGs, which were primarily derived like Adventure from Dungeons & Dragons, but unlike that game placed greater emphasis on combat and character progression than puzzle solving. Starting with top-down dungeon crawlers like Dungeon and the game of Dungeons, more commonly referred to today by their file names Pedit 5 and D&D Plateau RPGs, soon transitioned to a first-person perspective with games like Moria from 1975, Obillet from 1977, and Avatar from 1979, which often allowed multiple players to join forces to battle monsters and complete quests together. Like Adventure, these games ultimately inspired some of the earliest personal computer games. All of this will be changed at the end of 1970s and early 1980s with arrival of personal computers and better accessibility of technology itself, but as I said, that's the topic for next videos because video games in general got better reputation and became more widely popular in public. I would like to say thank you so much for watching my small project, and from next episode things will be more exciting because I will start talk about the golden era which solidified this medium into society, technology and influence. Thank you so much, see you next time and peace!